Hey, church family and friends, it is Pat and Trevor. And in the last few weeks, there's been a lot of effort being put into determining how we can safely regather in our church facilities. Big Canada has directed all of our churches, let's see, with attendance 75 or above, they've asked us not to meet in person until September. And so with that time, we're trying to use it wisely, and we have three teams that are working on different parts of the regathering. And we just kind of want to walk you through some of this and some of the directions and updates that you would be interested in knowing about. These three teams cover the first one, sanitizing and procedures. And then the second one is our auditorium equipment for live streaming and also being able to still pre-record. And then a third team is the auditorium usage. And these are a mix of our church at large families and some LT and some staff members that are on these teams. And I really appreciate how everyone has worked together, and man, they've had to meet several weeks in a row. And these teams have been looking at everything from the pros and cons of wearing face masks to how best to sanitize the restrooms and toilets. And so Pastor Trevor and I are coming to you today to kind of walk through some of the important needs and the decisions. Pastor Trevor?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to facilitate the work of our third team, and we've been meeting with the aim to come up how our church family can best meet together in the main auditorium in a way that's safe under the circumstances as we know them now. And we've been trying to look ahead and keep in mind the need to be adaptable for the future unknowns. And then just this past week, we met together in the auditorium with our tape measures in hand to see how that we could best utilize what we discovered as 4,500 square feet of space, which is available to serve our church. Our usual setup provides seating for approximately 450 people, and we calculate that's about 10 square feet per person, and that allows for aisles and a little bit of space, a moderate amount of space around each person. As we measured and did calculations in order to comply with the safe distancing measures that Ontario is asking of us, having 2 meters of space between individuals or households, we believe that will require approximately 30 to 35 square feet of space per person, which in an auditorium our size will provide seating for about 130 people, more or less.
Now, basically, we're talking about having to triple the amount of per person space needed as a result of the pandemic safety, right?
Yeah, that's right. However, when we did go into the auditorium with our tape measures and started to see how we could provide for that 2 meter spacing, we found that having the pews there complicated that significantly. Our church pews, you can imagine how they are, you sort of know, but they're 20 feet long, and the pews really only allow people to enter and exit from the two extreme ends, and there's no room for entry or exit from the middle of them. And when we measured the distance between the pews, we found in order to keep the minimum 2 meter physical distance between attendees, we saw that we'd only be able to seat people every 3 pews, leaving 2 empty pews between each of the occupied pews. And so in that type of scenario, we found that we would only have 6 pews available for seating on the west side of the center aisle, and 5 pews available for seating on the east side where the sound booth is. And so that makes only a total of 11 pews that we can use to seat people. And each of those pews only have access points on the outside of the 20 feet of seating. And so we saw that the pews are not an efficient way to seat people when physical distancing is required.
Yeah, that makes sense. Keeping a 2 meter physical distance will require more space per person. And I suppose you guys have talked about what if that changes in the future.
You're right. When we were together, we were thinking of that, and we know that we're making plans in a climate that's subject to change. And the safe seating configurations that we're looking at now, they're all based on the current requirements. But we're almost certain that public health will stipulate different requirements in the months and perhaps even the years to come. And the physical distancing requirements might be increased or decreased depending what happens in the future. And if the regulations change, we know that we may have to change our seating configuration again. So as we looked at things in the auditorium, we recognize, well, the pews offer the benefit of durability, but what they don't offer is flexibility. And looking ahead into that unknown future, it seems clear that having flexibility would be a real asset for our church family. The fact that the pews are 20 feet long and that they're screwed down into the concrete floor, that just doesn't allow much flexibility in how we seat our church family. Replacing the pews with chairs that we already own means that we could widen and increase the number of aisles that we have to allow for safe entry and exit to the seats. And we could also shorten the rows so that no one would have to step over other people in order to sit in the middle of a row. And we think then if we need to rearrange chairs in the future, we could do that depending on the circumstances.
Yeah. So, Trevor, you told me something, you shared some information about you and Sherry when you guys were talking about this at home. I don't think it's because either of you necessarily love the pews that much, but you were talking about that it brought some sadness, even some tears to your eyes. Just the idea that facing these big changes can be difficult, and certainly I think we as a staff, we feel for our whole church family as we face these changes together. That's been accelerated by COVID-19, and we're just in these uncharted waters as we go about making these decisions.
No, it's true. It kind of caught us off guard as I was working out some of the things that I would like to share with the church together with you today. As I shared that with Sherry, my wife, it triggered some tears, and then it triggered some tears in me, and we looked at one another and thought, well, it's not necessarily that the pews are that important to us, but that things are changing and things aren't going to be the way that they were. And so there's just a sobering reality to that, how much COVID-19 is changing things that we're used to. And I know that we have had this discussion in our church family before about the possibility of replacing the pews. And we had that conversation before we knew anything about COVID-19. And now I think what was once an option that we were able to discuss kind of calmly and just think it through and start to explore, all of this sudden it's become a more urgent need and a requirement that we just recognize it's going to change the look of the auditorium, the way that we've become accustomed to seeing it.
You shared with me an analogy that I had not thought of, but it really does help in understanding the decisions that are being needed to be made in this crisis.
Yeah, well, there is something that has helped me come to grips with this. And that is to think of everyone, all of you who form a part of our church, to think of you as my family, and to think of the church building as if it was my home. And the truth is, I've made numerous changes to the arrangement of our home over the years, just based on the needs of my family. And I think, if I lived by myself, and if I didn't have anyone else to think about, I would probably just leave things the way they are. I'll leave things how they are. My office at church is pretty much set up the same way it was 5 or 6 years ago when I came. And so I haven't had to make changes. However, as the needs of my family have changed, I've willingly made changes to my home, including moving furniture around to accommodate different needs. It was just 2 weeks ago, Sherry and I, we lugged a queen size bed from an upstairs bedroom down to a newly constructed guest room in the basement, so that my son and his wife and our granddaughter could sleep downstairs, where they would have a bathroom to themselves and a little more space when they came to spend the weekend with us. And Sherry and I learned the hard way that while a queen size mattress will fit down the stairs, a queen size box spring won't. And so now we're in the market for a double bed that will serve the needs of our growing family that we can put in our downstairs guest room. Some furniture has to go and other furniture has to be obtained in order to meet the needs of my family. And while I might be a little sad to see some furniture go and to have to make changes, I think ultimately I'm glad to do it, since I will always put family ahead of furniture. And I think the same thing can be true at church. While I might not be a person who loves to make changes and move things around, if it's in the best interest of the church family, I'll gladly choose family over furniture.
Yeah. You know, the pews have been a familiar sight to many of our church family for years. I think of you, Trevor, you were just a baby when the current pews were installed, and they've been there your whole life.
That's right.
So I understand that. Having something that having something like that around for so long makes it sad to let go of. I certainly understand that. And really, these are very stressful times that are stretching us. They're stretching us at home, at work, at school coming up in the fall. It's going to be so different. And yes, even church. And it's not the same day as it was just a mere 3 months ago. COVID-19 has changed our lives. It's changed our culture. It really, these are historic times, no doubt about it. You know, I think when we're frustrated and sad for what we've lost or what has changed in this COVID-19 reality, it would be easy to be very frustrated, maybe even leading to anger at the changes we've had to make at home this coming fall with school, maybe where you're working and again, here at church. But, you know, the Old Testament teaches us there's another way. And that is, instead of anger, it is better to lament. And to lament, it means to express grief. It means to experience sorrow, but with anticipation. The Psalms, there's 150 Psalms, and 42 of those Psalms are lament Psalms, meaning that David cries out in grief at something he's missing or something that has happened that he's not really been crazy about. But he ends the psalm on a note of faith and anticipation of what God is going to do. And so even though we're navigating our way through these changing times, we have to believe with hearts full of faith that God has wonderful things ahead for our church family, that God is still on the throne and that he's still able to work through these COVID times. And I know we've said many times leading up to the last few years, change is a part of life. And I get it. We may want to avoid change, but there's many changes we can't avoid, especially in these days. So I think giving God freedom to stretch us spiritually, it's helping us to become more like him as we make our way through the difficult times. I would say in conclusion, we sincerely believe this is what we need to do. And we sincerely trust that you'll extend COVID grace of support for the recommendations and the direction of our regathering teams and our leadership team and our staff. The pews just can't be configured to allow a safe and efficient social distancing within our regathering strategy, and removing them is our best option. So the plan to remove the pews and to set up the auditorium for regathering in September, as per our directive from BIC Canada, we plan on using the chairs that our church already has. We have gray chairs downstairs. We have some red chairs we'll be able to use. And so we welcome your ideas on how the pews could be repurposed. Is there a way that our church can benefit from those pews? And right now we think that we'd like to make them available to our church family, for those who would like to have them maybe as a keepsake. We might even, we'll have to see, we might even be able to even help make them available in customized lengths that would fit your home. But if you've got a creative idea for them, man, we'd love to hear that. So this coming Tuesday night at 8 p.m., we're going to have a church-wide Zoom. The link will be sent out in our church email. And if you don't get our church email, and you consider our church your faith family, and you'd like to be a part of that, if you'll just let us know, we will send you the Zoom link as well. And so this will be a church-wide Zoom meeting. It'll be with Mike Gilmore, chair of our LT, myself, Jim Lambert, who is the vice chair, and Al Marr, our staff, will be available. And many of our LT and many of our regathering team would be there. So would you join us Tuesday? We had a great turnout at our last church-wide Zoom that we recently had, and we'd love to have a great turnout for this. And I hope you can come. And I hope that you know that you are loved, and that we're walking with you as staff through these difficult days. And any way that we can help you, that is certainly our privilege and desire to do so. And I want you to know that you're loved. Thank you for hanging around after the service today to be able to hear this important update. And we thank God for you and our church. And we're excited how God is going to use us and continue to use us during this COVID season that God has allowed us to be a part of. Thank you so much. God bless you. Take care.